Hello, I would like to welcome everyone back to the channel. Today I am going to be blocking this fender which I primed about 7 days ago in a high build primer. I did a short clip on how I mixed this primer, a 4-to-1 ratio, but here you can see me using a level light to lay down the body line, get it leveled up. I also have a straight level on top of the fender, and once I get everything leveled, I will come in with painter's tape and I will tape just below that line. And that's why I begin my sanding from the top down, then I'll flip it and work the other way. But right now I'm just paying close attention to make sure I get everything really leveled and dialed in. As much as I trust myself, I learned that my naked eye can fail me sometimes. This is a cheap and inexpensive way that I found to get it right every time and kind of restore or repair those body lines crisp and get them back to where they were when they left the factory. So this is the primer that I was telling you guys about. This is an inexpensive duplicator primer. I buy it from my local O'Reilly's. I think the primer comes in at about $49 a gallon. The specialty reducer or lacquer thinner is about $20 a gallon. It typically mixes at a 1-to-1 ratio, which gives you or yields you approximately 2 gallons. But what I found for my best result and what I did here is I mix it at a 4-to-1 ratio, what I call my super high build primer. Traditionally, your 4-to-1 ratio primers would be your polyester fillers or what people call your liquid bondos. I'm not the biggest fan of them. I don't use them a lot. I found that taking this really inexpensive primer, building it up with a 4-to-1 ratio, spraying out of a 1.7 tip, gives me a really high build, levels really well, seals my holes extremely well, and most importantly, it blocks off like a really fine powder and gives me a great finish. So here you can see me spraying it with my LVLP low volume and low pressure gun that I carry. That'll soon be available for purchase on my website. And I'm just spraying about 3 to 4 coats of really wet primer on. Like I said, I'm mixing this at 4-to-1 versus 1-to-1. At the cost and how much it saves and how easy it is to prime, I'm convinced that this is one of the best things for a DIY budget builder that will still give you great high-end quality finish results and give you a really flat and level panel. And, you know, it's just overall good buy. It's something that you can find at a hardware store or your local parts store without having to order online and wait a couple of days or just pay crazy sticker prices. So this is my tip. 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 on this, and I use the 1-to-1, which the spec sheet calls for, as a sealer. So if you're looking for a primer that'll work as a sealer, this will work as a sealer as well. So now that I've got you seeing how I primed everything, and like I said, I let this sit and cure for a week. This isn't for any shrinkage. Let all the solvents evaporate. And today I'm coming back in. Like I said, I put my level line down. And I'm going out, and I think right now I'm probably coming in at like a 120 or an 80 grit sandpaper, and I'm just removing guide coat, blocking it down till there's no more guide coat first, And that lets me know that I've got a level panel, you know, no pinhole. What shows me my pinholes, shows me my highs and lows. And after I block it down, I start to work the line. Here you see me starting with a kind of little body roll or indentation that the fender naturally has where it curves. I've got a piece of 1/2 inch or 1 inch pipe that I've wrapped in some of the sticky back sandpaper, and it just kind of fits that groove or fits that curve really, really well so that I don't kind of square it off or start to dig into it. So I start there, and then after I've done that, I go back to my block and I work the rest of the kind of the outer concaving surfaces going down towards that line. And once again, as I said, you can see this stuff blocks down really, really well. I'm not having to sit here and scrub all day. I'm not having a lot of problems with it gumming up my sandpaper. Now, so if you go with some of the finer grits, the 220s, the 320s, it will gum you up a little bit. But in this case, I put it on really heavy at a 4-to-1. It's got a bit of a texture to it. So I'm going a little bit heavier grade sandpaper to start knocking it down. And it's smoothing it out pretty well, and it's knocking it down. So I'm not going to over talk this video. So I'll just let you watch for a little while. I'll come back in and chime in at times and explain what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. But for now, you can see that I'm just kind of going along, leveling off the surface, knocking down the guide coat, and getting everything really, really flush and smooth. So here in this part of the job, you can see I removed most of the guide coat and I've got the panel flat. So what I'm starting to do now is work down towards that piece of tape that I have where that body line is, and that tape is right on top of that body line. So what I'm doing is I'm working down towards the tape on that body line without kind of digging into it or eating up the tape, but I'm really kind of sharpening that edge along the tape and getting that line really quick, really crisp, getting everything really, really level, taking my time not to drag over it and round it off, but just kind of come right down to the top level of that tape and just kind of skim that high build off where I really don't have much of a black line showing, if at all, very, very faint. And I'm just kind of working that body line in and following it down the panel as I continue to remove guide coat through the rest of the panel, so I can get a really crisp, sharp line and start to lay the details and rebuild that line along the panel. So here I flip the panel, and this is kind of to make it a little bit easier for me to block and kind of work it. But also I want to show you guys a different angle so you can see how well this primer blocks off. And you can kind of see the powder or the dust of, you would almost think it's a body filler, and how it's blocking off and the amount of dust and the amount of powder that's come off of it. Like I said, I mixed this at a 4-to-1 and built it up really, really high. So it's working really, really well for me to come in and just kind of knock off the top, knock off the texture and the guide coat, and level the panel. And like everything else I do, once I get this thing guide coated and leveled off, I will come back and guide coat it again, and then I'll go to another grit sandpaper and a stiffer block, and I'll block it again to make sure that I got it really, really smooth and I didn't miss anything. And overall, this is probably my second or third time guide coating and blocking this, because I've done filler work on this before I got to this point, and I guide coated and blocked that filler work when I skim coated it. So now I put a high build on it, and I'm blocking this thing again. So once I get it blocked, like I said, probably 2 or 3 more times, I'll go over this. There'll be a wet sanding process before I actually get ready to put it in the sealer. So I'm really paying attention to detail, taking my time with this. This is a personal project. This is not a customer's car. So that allows me the time to, spray my primer and let it sit for a week or 3 to 7 days and let it dry out, let it shrink, let all solvents evaporate. Same thing I do with body fillers. If I do go and skim coat a panel, I don't hop onto it 20 or 30 minutes later. I let it sit for 3-4 days or a week. Let everything dry, let everything shrink so it doesn't move around on me. So when I start blocking it, I know that's what I have. So here you can see me just kind of cleaning this part of the fender up, getting the upper part above the line really, really clean before I get ready to remove that tape. Or before I move the tape, lay a tape line down right above this one, then remove the lower tape line and work from the bottom up towards that line. On this other part, you can see how clean everything is. I didn't break through to any metal. As I said, I skim coated this and guide coated the body filler before I ever hit this high build primer. So there's no breakthroughs. I didn't hit any metal. Level off everything really, really well. Right now it's just about getting this thing super flush and rebuilding all of the lines. 64 Impala actually has quite a bit of lines, quite a bit of curves, and if I've shaved all the trim off this panel, there are no holes. So I can't hide bad body work with trim. So I'm really paying attention to rebuilding every line. And they get rounded off over time as cars have had multiple paint jobs. So not only do I hit the main body line, I'll hit the wheel well trim and all the other sharp edges, and I'll rebuild every single one of them and make them just as crisp or crisper than they came from the factory in terms of detail and finish. So now, as I said, I'm laying down a tape line just above the line that I previously had and up until where I've sanded. Now, once I've got this line laid down, which is a great reference, to go right off the line that I already have when I use a laser level, I'll then come back and peel away that bottom line and then begin to block sand everything below that line. And just like I did on the top, work the lower surfaces first, then build my way up to that line and crisp that line, get that line really, really crisp and sharp before pulling the tape away. And I'll go back and forth on that a couple of times just to make sure I get a really, really razor sharp, super nice line. So now you can see me pulling away. I know my line's still straight because I used a previous reference that I had. And once I get the tape laid down good, I will begin to block this lower section of it. I'm continuing to work through the body lines. Off camera, I came and added tape along that wheel well, that lower wheel well and that lower trim piece. I've taped that off so I don't run over that and then round that off. But it also gives me a point on now top and bottom on where to work the line, how to create the line, or basically how to work the guide code without rounding my edges off. Like I said, this car has a lot of lines, a lot of curves, nothing flat about it really at all. And this is kind of a spongy curved block that I'm using, so it kind of contours a little bit, and I can roll it in those curves without, like I said, kind of cutting or squaring off the lines. But definitely, like I said, being patient, taking my time, taping off everything, making sure to recorrect or restore every single line, taking them back factory finish or better. And like I said, it's amazing to me how well this stuff stands down, and I'm definitely recommending to you guys to go check it out. Here I'm actually taking some 120, I think, and some of these little tighter curves and angles right around this fender well and where I kind of get between tight spaces. I'll work them by hand because I don't really have a particular block or a tool that can kind of fit those grooves like my fingers can, and I'll just kind of finesse them and work them. I don't try to dig in or push. I keep my hands flat, but I basically just follow line, remove the guide coat by hand without messing up the lines, and it gives me really, really good results. Sometimes you got to put down the machines, you got to put down the big tools, you got to put down everything that's fast, that's designed to save you more time, and go back to the old traditional way of touch and feel, and just kind of getting intimate in the process of correcting and repairing panels. So once again, I'm continuing to detail and work these smaller areas, going by hand using a piece of sandpaper that I folded over and working, and then I'll move over to a smaller door block, the kind of mini block, and I've got some paper wrapped around that, and it kind of flows with the curve right there where that little fender well lip is, and it fits right in between those two lines and gives me a chance to get the area level without going in with a big block causing too much collateral damage or eating up the tape and eating up the body line. I can kind of fit the contour and just really work the area out really, really well and get it back. To remove the tape here, you can clearly see with the naked eye, even through camera, how sharp and detailed this line is. And this is the kind of finish that I'm going for, and this is the kind of finish that you want if you're paying somebody top dollar for what you want to be a show car finish, or at least a really good driver show car finish. Man, I'm not a competitive guy. I don't enter my cars in shows, but I want a bodywork that speaks for what I'm putting out in terms of a project. If I'm going to be spending money on different parts and different areas on the car and I'm spending a lot of money, I want bodywork and a paint job that looks equivalent, that's respectable. When a person walks up, before they look at everything else, they look at the bodywork and comment on that, then move on to the wheels, rims, interior, etc. Here you can see I've taped off the upper section right around the wheel well, and now I'm preparing to block that wheel well lip so that I can get a really sharp edge right along that as well. So everything flows, everything smooths, but every time you get to a line, I just want a really sharp, crisp line, and everything lines up, nothing's wavy, everything's dialed in and flows exactly as it should be. So here I am. As I move the camera around, you can see why I've taped off this lower trend line, and I have a piece of tape below it and above it, so that allows me to come in and completely flatten out the top portion of this line and get it really, really flat with what I've done on the upper side of it. And then once I get this line flat, I will move the tape from the bottom line and I'll work it from the bottom up and give me a sharp edge on the top, sharp edge on the bottom, and a completely flat surface or a completely flat line, because where I'm standing right now once had a piece of aluminum trim, and it probably had about 4 holes on the side, which I took my time and stamped out some sheet metal plugs and welded those in, did a little bit of filler work on top of them, So I don't want it to be wavy. I want it to be super smooth and basically invisible, so you never know that trim existed down the side of this car. So just taking my time with the block, making sure to get it flat first, then work the line right up to the tape so everything's really, really crisp. I mean, you can run a piece of thread or a needle down it and the line's just really, really razor sharp. Like I said, this isn't a race given to the swift at all, but the end result is a beautiful piece of work.
Pandora has all the songs for your ears. RockAuto.com has all the parts.
So here you can see me preparing to peel back that lower piece of tape. I've came and I've retaped the top one so I don't sand over the top that I just got flush. And this is about now I'm working that lower part of the front fender to get that blocked off really smooth while working up to that line as I've done on all the rest of the lines and restoring that line to match the crispness of everything else. So I won't talk too long about this because I've already went through the process a couple of times, but I just really want you guys to see how detailed it is and kind of why paint jobs cost so much and what a body man's doing. It's not just get it in, scuff it and spray it like everybody thinks, oh, it's not that bad, just scuff it, spray it, fix a couple of spots. If you want a really, really high quality finish or you want a good paint job, and basically the difference between a $3,000 or $4,000 paint job and a guy who's charging you $20,000 to $40,000 for a paint job, it's the labor that goes into it. This is a labor-intensive, hands-on job. There are no real shortcuts to it, and each of these steps is going to be repeated 4, 5, sometimes even up to 8 times if you really want a flat, super clean panel. So here I am just kind of working in an X pattern, and this is a basic old standard hard rubber block, nothing fancy. It doesn't flex, it doesn't move, and I'm just taking a guide cut away. And once again, you can see how well this sands off. You would almost think it was, like I said, once again, you would almost think it is a body filler for the amount of dust or the powder of how well and how easy this is coming off without me having to go, stop and clean up the sandpaper. It's gumming up really bad. I'm just working across the panel, kind of making sure I evenly distribute, not stay in one spot too long, and just kind of covering strokes in the X pattern and clean this panel up. And it won't take long before you see me get this lower part really flat. And once again, I'm super excited of how well this is coming out. And as you can see from watching me do this work, I didn't break through anywhere, so I don't have any highs, I don't have any lows. I didn't take it down to metal anywhere. So I know this panel is really, really flat and really, really straight. But as I've said already, once I get all this done, I will guide coat this again, come in with a higher grit sandpaper, and I'll probably wet sand it to smooth it down because I like the way with the higher grits, the wet sandpaper just kind of removes and washes away the guide coat while I work it, and I get a little bit of a slicker finish, a smoother finish, so I can get this thing prepped for some sealer and paint down the line. To remove the tape, you can quickly and easily see by eye how flat this panel is, how well it's blocked down. The guide coat came off really, really well. I've got crisp, clean lines, and I've got a great finish. This is something that you guys can do at home by simply taking your time and following these steps, and I hope this helps you guys a lot.